Good morning, Rabbi Isai. Yesterday, we were talking about how in order to eat kachim, you have to have a mizbeach. Whether it's a mincha, kachim, and even kachim kalim, you need to have a mizbeach. If the mizbeach is destroyed or has a begam, somebody threw an esrei on it, you cannot eat kachim kalim, says Abaya. Says the Gemara, very, very strong language. Kisalik Rav, 9 lines from the bottom of Samachom and Beis. Amar l'shmaitzek hamed Rabbi Yirmiyah. He said over what Abai said, that in order to eat kachim kalim, you need a mizbeach to be full and whole, shalom. Omar, he said, Bavloi tipshai. These Babylonians are mamish shaitim. In other words, he's talking about Abaya. He said about Abaya that he's not the sharpest tool in the shed. Amtul diyasve ba'arach hashoicha. It's because they live in a very dark country. So they say dark things. So says the Gemara, how did Abai not hear this? The Sanya, it says, when Klai Yisrael takes down the Mishkan, they start moving in the Midbar, then all the karbanas become possible. So what do you see? That without a mizbeach, it's possible. You can't eat a karban, like Abai says. So here's the Mishkan. Here they are taking apart the Mishkan. Once they take apart the Mishkan, then they start moving, the kachim become possible. When they're moving, if a person is a zav, he can't be next to the aron. If he's a mitzayre, he has to be mechutz l'machna. The machna continues. In other words, it's not only when they're stationary you have the different camps, but even when they're moving, you have the same camps, and the mitzayre has to go out of the camp. But we have a contradiction. It says the kachim are eaten when it's stationary, and the kachim are eaten when they're moving. So you see, even if there's no mizbeach, you could eat kachim. My love, and you have to explain haba kachim kalim. We have a contradiction. In the one hand, it says that when there's no mizbeach, when they're breaking down the mizbeach and the whole mishkan, you cannot eat kachim. So we'll say that's kachim. The other one that says that you could eat kachim is talking about kachim kalim. But it says meforish l'chayra, at least kachim kalim you're allowed to eat. So why does Abai say that you're not allowed to eat kachim kalim if there's no mizbeach? Says the Gemara, you know what? Let me answer. You have a contradiction in two brises. On the one hand, it says you're not allowed to eat kachim, and the other one says you are allowed to eat kachim if the mizbeach is broken down. V'loi kashya. Top of Samach Aleph Amud Aleph. The shortest is going to be mamish short, 1.5 minutes. Ha Rabbi Shmuel. Remember, yesterday we had Rabbi Shmuel, who learned from a hekesh. Let me just do it from the beginning. That it says by a bchar that in order to sprinkle the blood, you have to have a mizbeach. So from that we learned a hekesh to meat. In order to eat the meat, you have to have a mizbeach. And from that we learned a hekesh to meiser sheni. In other words, he holds that even kachim kalim need a mizbeach. Okay, so that's one mandomar. So Abaya goes like that mandomar. Harabanan and Rabbanan argue. They say you don't need a mizbeach in order to eat kachim kalim. In other words, the Gemara is saying, listen, we don't have a raya not to here, not to there. It could be both of the brises are talking about kachim kalim. It could be that both talking about kachim. No kasha Abaya. Umay b'shnei mekaymus. What does it mean that in two places? What's the b'shnei mekaymus kachim nechal? You're allowed to eat. What does it mean? Two places. One place is koidim she'amidu leviyim es hamishkan, meaning koidim means usually in Hebrew means before. Says Rashi, it doesn't really mean before. It means after. You can see this in Taisus Dira Maskil. Koidim she'amidu hamishkan. So Taisus says, Pirush Rashi lav dafka koidim, elo la'achar she'amidu akol. It means after. Okay. Regardless, the point is that once the Mishkan is standing in the mizbeach, so you're permitted to eat kachim kalim. And what's daf samach aleph on the base? The second place is The Mizbeach is stationary. Nobody moved the Mizbeach, but they took down the entire. Oh, so check it out. Since there's no walls, but the Mizbeach is there, so I could go ahead and I could be makriv. I could eat my kachim kalim. Why? Because the Mizbeach is there, but there's no walls. What's the chiddush? What's the problem? The Mizbeach is there. We just said the main thing is that you have a Mizbeach. Okay, you have a Mizbeach. You don't have walls. So what if there's no walls? But there's a Mizbeach. Maybe I should consider the fact there's no walls that he took it outside of the Beis Hamikdash. So what if there's a Mizbeach? What if you took the Mizbeach and you put it in Borough Park and you ate? It's Yaitse. So over here, since there's no walls, there's no Beis Hamikdash, it's as if you took it out, and that's the problem. No, the Iker is the Mizbeach and not the walls, says the Gemara. And maybe if there's no walls, maybe you're actually not allowed to eat the kachim kalim. Once Klal Yisrael is in motion, it's still called oil moed. Even though you're moving and you're traveling, oil moedu. It's considered an oil moed. It's still oil moed. It's not packed up. It's still the oil moed. Omer Rabun Omer Rav. So now we go into even an easier sugya. Mizbeach shel Shiloi shel Avonim haya. They did a phenomenal job here. I'm just saying, a lot of this stuff is a lot of kishrin. You have to be artistic and you have to have a good mind for this, because a number of these things, I gave them ideas, but they made it so much better than I ever thought it would come out. Over here, all I asked for, I said, give us a little history, show us a clip of history, show us where the Mizbeach was in different stages. So we know the Mizbeach was in the Midbar, but then what? What's the first stop? The first stop is Gilgal. Then from there, went to Noiv and Givon. Then from there to Shiloh for 396 years. Then to, I think it went like that. Then to Yerushalayim. So what the chachma over here is that they used the voice of like a narrator in a history channel. Todas Givaldik. Unfortunately, we can't hear it, but trust me, it's Gishmak.
When Bnei Yisrael crossed the Yarden, the Mishkan was placed in Gilgal, near Jericho. The Mishkan stood there for 14 years, and the Aaron went out with them to their battles, rather than remaining in a fixed place. From there, the Mishkan moved to Shiloh. A stone altar was built, and the Mishkan stood in Shiloh for 369 years. When Eli the Kohen Gadol heard that the Aaron had been captured by the Plishtim, he breathed his last, and Shiloh was abandoned. The Mishkan was then moved to the Kohanite city of Nov. After the death of Shmuel, King Shaul destroyed Nov, and the Mishkan was relocated to Givon. The period of Nov and Givon together lasted 57 years, during which the Aaron no longer dwelled in the Mishkan. In the 4th year of King Shlomo's reign, the temple was built in Yerushalayim, a permanent house for generations, marking the end of the Mishkan's long journey.
Okay. The bottom line is that in Shiloh, the Mizbeach was there for 396 years. The Sanya Rebbe Lezer Yaakov Oimer, we are 2, 4, 6, 8 lines from the top. Matam Aloimer Avonim Avonim Avonim. Shalish Pamim. There's the famous game, Chamesh Avonim, I don't know what they call it, Kugelach in English. In Hebrew, it's Chamesh Avonim. Over it's Shalosh Avonim. It says the word Avonim 3 times in the Torah. Echad Shel Shiloi, Ve'echad Shel Noi V'Givon, Ubeis Elamim, and the final place of the Beis Hamikdash, and Beis Hashem, Bekarev Mamish, there's going to be a Bayis Shlishi on Har Bayis. Maser Ravacha Barami, Eish Yordam and Hashemayim b'mei Moshe, Lo Nistalka Mal Mizbech and Achoshes Elo b'mei Shloimoi. Listen to this. The fire that came down, a fire came down from Shemayim in the shape of a lion. And that fire remained on the Mizbeach all the way, hundreds of years to Shlomo HaMelech. And look what happens when you pour meat on it. It evaporates instantaneously. It's not the regular heat of a fire that we have in this world. It's an outerly world fire. It comes from Shemayim. So Eishiyad ben Shemayim Meishel in Stalkom Am is back and Achoshes ben Meishloima lasted all the way to Shlomo HaMelech's days. The Eishiyad ben Meishloima And the fire that came down in Shlomo's days, Menashe, the king Menashe, the Rosh Merusha, when he destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, destroyed the Mizbeach, so then the fire went away. The problem is, how could you tell me that the fire stayed from Moshe Rabbeinu all the way to Shlomo HaMelech if you're telling me that there's different Mizbeachs and the one in Shiloh is made out of stone? It's not the same Mizbeach. So when you make a new Mizbeach, the fire stops, right? Says Gemara, no, who damak Reb Nosson? We all like Reb Nosson. The sign Reb Nosson Omer, Mizbeach shel Shiloi shel Nechoshir Soya. Moshe Rabbeinu's Mizbeach, we know, was made out of copper. We just asked the question, if he made it out of stone, then the fire went away. It's a different Mizbeach. No, the one in Shiloh was also made out of copper. However, why is it called Avanim? Because it was filled with stones. Here we go. Here are the two Mizbeachs. They look the same. And the fire is the same. But the inside of Moshe Rabbeinu's was dirt, was sand, and the inside of Shlomo's was made out of stone. What does it mean that the fire, the flame of Moshe Rabbeinu's Mizbeach never went away? It didn't go away completely. But it was there, but it wasn't there. What does that mean? Mai, what does that mean? Look at these beautiful pictures. It would send sparks. Take a look. Here it is in the shape of a lion. And Moshe Rabbeinu's Mizbeach was actually very close by to Shlomo HaMelech's Mizbeach. But once in a while, it would send a spark. It would send the spark over. That's Shviva. It says the Gemara, Rabbanan Namri Shviva Ava Mishadra. Rabbanan say that spark went from Moshe Rabbeinu's Mizbeach to Shlomo HaMelech's Mizbeach. It was like a guest. Sometimes the guest was here. Sometimes it's on Moshe Rabbeinu's. Avi, you're going to love this one. And sometimes the guest, the lion, goes to the other Mizbeach. Gewaltige stuff. Tanan awesome. So we know, yesterday we were discussing Shlomo HaMelech's Mizbeach. Everybody remember how many amas on Shlomo? Do you remember, Avi? How many square amas they had to do the karbanos, to burn the karbanos? Moshe Rabbeinu's was 1, and his was 20 by 20, right? 20 by 20, which is 400 amma. So how do we get to 20 by 20? Because in reality it was 28 by 28. But if you remove, like Moshe Rabbeinu was also, you have to remove 4 ammas from each side. How? The bottom you have yisoid. Then in the middle you have a soivev. Each one is an amma. Then on top you have the area of the horns, the kronos, and then you have one more amma of where the kohanim walk. Is a total of 4. 4 on this side, 4 on this side. So you take off 8 amma, and you're left with 20 amma in the center. 20 by 20, which is 400 square ammas. But when Klal Yisrael, so it's really, you're talking about a 28 by 28 Mizbeach. When Klal Yisrael came back for Bayis Sheni, they came back from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael. Yisifu all of Arba Amis min Adaroim, Ba'arba Amis min Amariv. They added 2 walls, each one was 4 amas wide, on the southern wall and on the western wall. So it looks something like this. The red area. So now the Mizbeach suddenly becomes, again, a perfect square of 32 by 32 if you just add an L. Kimin Gamma is like a Chaf in Greek. So the question is, why do they have to add those extra 4 amas? I didn't do the cheshbon. How much is 4 times 32? And then you have to do 4 times 28. So I don't know what that is, the math. Well, no, that doesn't help. That doesn't matter. Okay. The reason why they added all that is because the original 28 amma Mizbeach wasn't large enough for all the karbanos that Klal Yisrael was bringing. As the Gemara, Abai asks his Rebbe, Rav Yosef, it doesn't make sense what you're saying. Where were there more people? The first Beis Hamikdash or the second Beis Hamikdash? The first Beis Hamikdash by far. It says in the pasuk, Yudav Yisrael Rabim Kechoil Asher Alayom. There's so many Jews, millions and millions of Jews, like the sand on the beach. And that smaller Mizbeach was enough. 5 amma was enough. 5 by 5 was enough. And when only 42,000. So what happened? Ezra had a hard time bringing Klal Yisrael. 42,000 people came with him. 42,000. So why is 42,000 not enough? If millions is enough on a 5 amma, why can't 42,000 people make it on a 28 amma? Says the Gemara, I'll tell you why. It's only 40,000. It's not enough. The point is, because we said before, Moshe Rabbeinu's fire had a special power to it. Anything you put in evaporated, disintegrated in milliseconds. So you could put 142,000 animals in one shot and they'll all evaporate. But Shlomo HaMelech didn't have that kind of fire, and therefore they had to enlarge it. You know why? It was a plumbing issue. It was, every contractor knows this. This is the shisen. There's a lot of korbanos. The korbanos that come with wine, like a oila. You have to pour the wine. On Sukkot, you pour water into these vessels over here. It wasn't always like that. Originally, they took the wine and poured it directly on the mizbeach, and the wine would fall off the mizbeach, drip down the wall, and go into some sewer system. But they didn't want that. They wanted it to be clean. So they made it. They piped it in. So over here you can see that the piping is inside the mizbeach. This is like a X-ray of what you see. These red pipes are inside. This is how they build it. Here you can see it clearer over here. They wanted it to go directly into the Amma, which takes its water, takes it right out of the base of image. Is there a concern? Is that a problem? So, but in order to get it close to where they need it, they had to build the mizbech out. Another 2 amma. But you can't just build one wall. It has to be a perfect square, so they built 2 walls. Shisen oisifu. So as the Gemara explains, Mikar savar mizbech adama shuatam ba'adama. In the first place, Hamikdash they held that you're not allowed to do something like that. Why? You can't have any pipes inside the mizbech. It has to be 100% made out of dirt, adama, no holes. So but in the second Beis Hamikdash they said, Shesio kachila. But then they said, you know what? No. A mizbech has to drink. Just like the mizbech eats meat, it drinks wine. And this is l'tzoyrech the mizbech. Says Rashi. This is for the purpose of mizbech, so you're allowed to pipe it up with plumbing. So why does it say in the pasuk it should be dirt? Not the whole thing 100% dirt. It has dirt in there. It's connected with dirt. It can't be suspended on beams or something like that. Keep him not on pylons or beams. And you shouldn't have any tunnels underneath it. It needs to be solid on the ground. And with this, we finish today's daf. Rabbi side, where do we go from? From daf samach all the way to daf samach beis. Rabbi Sai, have a wonderful day.
Merit the schus of spreading Torah throughout the world. Sponsor a shir today. MDYsponsor.com or sponsor at MDYDaf.com.